about AI. Let's dig in there a little bit and the prerequisites to being able to leverage AI in the iManage environment. Terry, from an ID and data governance perspective, what are the keys to that, and what does that really look like in order to fully be able to take advantage of the AI enhancements?
Well, I think it kind of fundamentally starts with getting the content that you want to be able to mine and leverage into the repository. And there's a lot of information in a lot of law firms that still lives outside of iManage. So if you really want to leverage iManage as a key KM repository and leverage AI to retrieve that information, it's got to be in the repository to be accessed, right? And all these AI technologies that Kevin was just starting to talk about, some that are near AI and some that are more actually AI, are only coming in cloud.iManage. So if firms aren't yet on that cloud.iManage platform, they're gonna need to be. So I think that's key. I think the whole notion of email filing, getting lawyers to file their email as part of the client matter file has been a challenge we've been fighting for years, decades now at this point. Filing email is hard, right? We're all getting hundreds of emails every single day, and how do I possibly take the time to do that and get it in the solution? But the Mailbox Assistant promises to improve the automated ability to get things at least initially tagged with the proper client matter workspace, so that we can get just click it and say go, and then the email is filed, right? So I think those are some key aspects of doing it. The ability to not only just search for documents based on the core metadata that's been assigned through the document profiling activity, putting the document into a folder within a workspace, the document inherits key metadata, but the ability to look into the document and start to leverage not only the traditional metadata about the document, but some additional data elements that are buried within the document through an AI experience. I think that will start to really help the retrievability, if you will, of the documents where people are struggling. That's why Kevin said earlier, it's not just so much about search, it's about, am I retrieving what I want, and am I getting the results that I want and need?
Which is one of the big complaints about search. We talked about the problems with search is not just searching for the content and coming up with thousands of hits. It's really finding, I want these key things, parts of the metadata included with the search that really kind of pinpoint what you're looking for.
Right.
Is there any
There's also, Kevin, I think there's going to be some other ability to activate Power Automate in terms of some basic form and workflow, right? And so when a document's already been filed in iManage and they need to kick off a process around review or taking some action for the document, being able to do that right from within the environment where they're working, it isn't probably going to be at the level of an actual workflow solution, but to really automate and kick some of these processes off and make sure they're being done more consistently from the place in which people are working regularly, I think is going to be a big driver to be able to support the ways in which lawyers work. And we're all about trying to understand, how lawyers work today and how we can reduce that friction to make this experience better so that they're happy to work in the document management environment generally and iManage specifically.
I recall when we were having a conversation in preparation for this discussion, you're both Kevin and Terry and sharing that iManage has been partnering pretty closely with Microsoft, and what that looks like in terms of its open AI platform and being able to leverage that specifically. Can you share a bit about that topic?
There was a lot of talk about that as well at the partner briefing, that the partnership between iManage and Microsoft, where the information sits inside of Microsoft natively, and applying the not just what iManage is coming up with from an API perspective, but also partnering with Microsoft to bring to the table a lot more R&D and all the features they're also including. And some of that information is evolving. There's an AI specific briefing coming up from iManage that we can include to the attendees here that want to hear more about that. I think we can spend the next 45 minutes talking about those things, but I think I think we're probably better suited for iManage to go into those more in depth, but Terry, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I was just going to mention that the iManage webinar, which is on Tuesday, April 9th at noon Eastern. So be on the lookout for an invite from iManage, where some of their product experts will be sharing with you all more specifics about their AI roadmap and how that's going to be, that functionality and the new benefits and features will be folded into the technology.
David, I'm really curious if you could just speak maybe broadly about your takeaways from the current scope of capabilities of AI and iManage, and how that compares to what you're looking for to enable your attorneys.
Yeah, well, I mean, one point I'll make generally, Kevin touched on it earlier, is we're still very much at the beginning of this journey. So even though we talk about how things are speeding up, et cetera, whether it's been discussions with Microsoft or discussions with iManage, we see that, many of the efforts to expand on this stuff is happening right now. So I think familiarizing yourself with the partner and their roadmap or the partnership with Microsoft. I mean, I use that as a guide sometimes, of my vendor relationships, who are Microsoft partners. I mean, their partner universe gets extra attention, extra funding, as we talked about. And often they can suggest who those people are as well. So those have been some really good steers. So I think leveraging that relationship and then contributing to that, again, iManage has several means by which they reach out to our industry and ask for comments on what's important to us. We see those interfaces opening up for Power Automate and other development resources to get hooks into their tools, in addition to the ability to chime in on what's important. So email is a huge one, right? It's a treasure trove of knowledge, and that could be a bad thing in a breach scenario. So I think, before we get to the AI piece, it's back to the information governance, how we define, what that data is and how long it lives there. It should be a shorter life cycle than iManage. And then, the means by which we get that in there, and then the means by which iManage is developing tools with automation around the handling of that data, because there's a lot of garbage in email too. So I think that's an important one. And then, of course, how will it contribute to search, right? I mean, certainly in all of this AI change, we anticipate search improving, how the application functions, and that focus is on AI. So for me, it's get away from on-premises, get to the cloud, and part of that message to the businesses, that's where we can expect to see workflow improvements take shape.
And it sounds like, as we've been talking, we're sort of tacitly building a case for moving to the cloud because of all of these added capabilities that the environment brings to bear. Terry, we've talked about the importance of information governance and data governance in such an initiative, but what are the risks if the firm doesn't shore that up in advance of migrating to the cloud? And then also keeping in mind that some of the folks who might be tuning in are already in the cloud. So could you kind of speak to what that process could look like, and what the downside is of not engaging with that process? And
yeah, well, again, as we've kind of said earlier, that there's always a driver to mitigate the amount of data that we're storing, right? Let's get rid of it as soon as we can. There's been a logic or a thinking or a mindset, if you will, in law firms for years that, well, I don't want to get rid of it because I never know when it might save the day, when I might be able to answer a question of a client. But we need to be much more thoughtful as to when we allow for that longer term retention to be the rule of the day. So getting information cleaned up before we go to the cloud is ideal. Getting it cleaned up once we're in the cloud is always a continued, good deal. Shortening those retention periods and making sure that we're getting rid of data in a defensible way in the normal course of business, kind of classic records management 101 stuff, which is still, pretty important. The other thing to be mindful of is as we're getting rid of data, most of these cloud storage contracts have data limits or data caps. And so if you go over that, you're going to end up paying more to store the data. So if we can continue to be mindful of that and be reducing that volume of data, that I think can be helpful in terms of, potentially saving money. So I just think, in short, it's never too late to do, IG. We want to make sure that what the information we are retaining is important, needs to be there, and that we're able to find more precisely what we're looking for. And that's the other downside of having so much data, particularly if you start pointing AI at the data sets. If you've got a lot of garbage in there, then that starts to muddy your the outcomes that you can get back from that, from leveraging AI, which is, I think, another key thing to think about. So